Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the TV Pilot's License Flight number 62 with service to the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. We ask that you please fasten your headphones, secure your podcasting device, and remember, on today's flight, we are actually pawning the plane for some extra cash. So, who has 20 bucks?
Welcome to the TV Pilot's License. My name is Geoff Kerbis, joined by Rich Inman and Max Singer. How you boys doing today?
I didn't know we were flying Spirit.
Yeah,
Spirit.
I was better while I had a seatbelt.
Spirit, sponsor the pod. Well, boys, this week we are talking about a show that, something a little bit different. We're talking about Pawn Stars. But before we dive into the deeds of bargaining, selling, pawning, Max, do you mind telling folks what this podcast is all about?
I was just thinking about if Spirit sponsored the pod. It's like, it's free if you want to listen to just Max and Jeff, but Rich will cost you extra.
a premium third host.
Yeah, you get two hosts included. Any guests or the third host will cost you. So here at TV Pilot's License, we break down and analyze the pilot episodes of some of TV's most famous, or in some cases, infamous shows. We learn about how these shows came to be and were originally made, if they're effective pilot episodes and making us want to watch more, and if we think they can be made today. Go back and stream our old episodes wherever you get podcasts from. Check us out on YouTube to see our smiling faces. And if it is your first time flying with us, then welcome aboard.
So, boys, we're going to Vegas, for those who don't know, and this...
It's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a little bit since we've been in Vegas.
Yes.
I think last time we were in Vegas, there were some talking lions, but specifically, this podcast is coming out right before a pretty exciting weekend in Las Vegas, and I am asking you both to enter into the garage as we join the F1 Driver's License podcast to talk about something that we're all sort of a little bit passionate about, which is F1 racing. So are you all excited? Do you think this is just a gigantic spectacle? Do you feel very poor looking at the prices of tickets? Please discuss.
I mean, I think that doing a straightaway down the actual Vegas Strip in front of all the hotels is very, Need for Speed coded. I hear the PD Pablo blasting in the loading screen, as I'm getting ready for this race. I want them to just go dumber, though. I wish they had the money to blow out all the casino floors and actually race cars through the casinos. What I'm pitching is Mario Kart. What I want this race to be is Mario Kart.
Rich, what about you as our original F1 fan of the three of us?
Look, if there is one city that's tailor-made for novelty sporting events, it's Las Vegas. They hosted the first NHL outdoor game on what's essentially a leaky pond that they put out in the middle of the strip. That went over very poorly because they forgot about how locusts and grasshoppers exist. I am really looking forward to this for maybe the first couple laps, and then this is going to be one of the worst courses ever. It's all straight away. It's basically just a drag race. There's only two cars that can really handle that on the track, and I think Red Bull's going to win this by maybe 3 full minutes if they do.
Red Bull, the official drink of Las Vegas.
Hey,
Red Bull vodka.
Yeah, and for myself, I am genuine. I think that the TV production of this has an opportunity to be something really, really cool to watch, if that makes sense. There are going to be some magnificent shots of this race that, you just don't see on other tracks, right? I am fully expecting, I'm calling it now, there's going to be a photo of the fountain at the Bellagio going off with Max Verstappen crossing right in front of it, and it's going to be in slow motion where you see the effects and all that, and I'm going to be frame it, put it in the loop. I want that somewhere in my home. But yeah, I think it's going to be so much fun, and knowing that it potentially could be the end of the F1 season, what's more American than blowing it all in Vegas?
Let's do a roulette wheel to decide what tires they drive on.
Oh my God, yes.
I would watch that. I would
100%. Or they can bid how many points they're putting up to see if someone can outwin Red Bull and take the Constructors' Cup. Let's do that. Let's go for it. Well,
Dumber.
yeah.
Dumber.
dumb. But with that little thank you, audience, for appeasing us and our dumbness.
And if
Rich,
you fast forwarded, you're right.
yeah, sure. Rich, what's your question of the week?
Well, okay, so this is maybe the first show that we've done that was for a long period of time, was my turn off your brain show, like while cooking and folding laundry, or just like I had a really long day at work. I need to like really not do anything. It hits a lot of cadences of it's extremely simple. The people who host the show we're talking about Pawn Stars again, not F1.
Martin Brundle is great in Pawn Stars.
Pawn Stars is one of those shows that's like extremely simple to follow. It has 17 commercial breaks throughout the entire thing. Watching it without a commercial break, the whole episode is maybe 8 minutes long. And I want to know, like, what is that show for you? What is your completely, I can zone out entirely. I can go in and out. I don't need to follow this show at all and still enjoy it type show.
So if we're talking about all of TV,
Mm-hmm.
Baseball is very easy to zone out on, right, in all honesty, right? Like there's not enough that happens, and there's very distinct sounds that clue you in on, I need to be looking at the TV at this moment in time. But if we're talking about more traditional like TV, in all honesty, it is any form of like that evening game show that's on like between 6 and 7 p.m. So like
Big Wheel of Fortune guy.
Big Wheel of Fortune, Family Feud. If I can find an episode of Celebrity Jeopardy and feel really smart, I'm on it. Like that is absolutely something that I turn on to wind down and just like turn off the brain a little bit. Max, what about you?
If we're talking strictly things that could be on in the background and I can half watch while I'm nodding off on the couch or in the bed, one of my favorite shows for this it's called Most Expensivest with 2 Chainz, and it's basically the old Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous show, but with 2 Chainz, and it's incredible. And they do things like learn about everything from like the highest price experiences you could have in Vegas, which is a really fun episode, to extravagant sneakers, to pet care, to even ones about luxury retirement home communities. And he's just so earnest in like his interest in getting to know these experts who are appraising these insane objects for him. It's a delight to watch. Go check it out.
Well, Rich, thank you for that question of the week. Before we dive a little bit deeper into Pawn Stars, a quick word from our sponsors.
Sponsors.
Welcome back. Let's talk about a synopsis of Pawn Stars really quickly. Rick Harrison and his family own and run a pawn shop on the Las Vegas Strip. Yep.
Hey.
Let's Max, do you mind telling us what this is all about?
Totally. So today we are talking about the premiere episode of Pawn Stars titled Boom or Bust, which originally aired on July 19th, 2009. And we'll be talking about TV producer Brent Montgomery a little bit. Montgomery is best known as the head and founder of Left Field Pictures, and he began his TV career working in local news in Texas before cutting his teeth in reality TV, working as a freelance producer on shows including The Bachelor, Blind Date, and Wife Swap. Montgomery sells his first show in 2008 to True TV, the short-lived The Principal's Office, which, yes, followed principals in high schools around the country and filmed the, quote, dramatic and humorous encounters between principals and their students. Those are True TV's words, not mine. True TV is a channel that I watch for 2 weekends a year when for some reason they have the opening rounds of the March Madness basketball tournament. While attending a bachelor party in Las Vegas later in 2008, Montgomery is captivated by the number of pawn shops and the endless wild oddities inside. He has location scouts try to find a family-owned and operated store who would possibly be interested in being on TV. They find the Harrison family of gold and silver pawn shop who were no strangers to TV themselves. The shop was featured in a PBS documentary in 2001, an episode of Insomniac with Dave Attell in 2003, and even shot a pilot with HBO that was never picked up to series. The HBO pilot was described as being more of a taxi cab confession style show centered on the late night shift at a 24-hour pawn shop in Vegas. Left Field and the Harrisons shoot a 7-minute sizzle reel in January of 2009. For those listening at home not familiar with the term, a sizzle reel is basically like a short miniature proof of concept to give networks an idea of what the show you're making could be in theory, but not a full episode in itself. They filmed this under the name Pawning History, and one eye-rolling name change later, the show was sold to the History Channel. And the rest is...
Oh, no.
Stars. It's stars.
The rest is stars.
The rest is stars. Well, Max, thank you so much for that history of, the stars of this show. Let's get an appraisal on our thoughts about this pilot and dive right in. And I think that we start off really well on this episode, which makes it seem as though there are many episodes of this show. And if you are watching this for the first time, how have you been missing all of the previous non-existent episodes of this show?
It's been a while since we could talk about scripted TV, but there's a little rule in screenwriting where you want to enter a scene late and exit early. And this show lets you enter late. It's a great tactic, great screenwriting.
So, let's meet these characters, or these real-life human beings that exist in the shop. And we get introduced to them through, our intro montage of sorts. Our main person, our main character is Rick Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very simply. Then I would say we have his son, Corey, who almost acts as this apprentice. And then Old Man.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta give Corey his nickname too, Big Hoss.
Yeah, Big Hoss and Old Man. I love that Rick gave everyone else in his family nicknames and he doesn't take one himself. That's a little selfish.
Well, that kind of makes him like the straight man too. It's like Rick. Mm-hmm. Rick is the center straight man, and these are the characters around.
These are the cut-ups. Yeah,
and I did find it interesting that throughout this episode, we do meet a lot of other people as if hey, we're still trying to figure out who's going to be a star on the show or who's going to stick, but we don't want to put them in the intro package. So one person in particular who, the average bear might know if they've ever heard of this show, it goes by the name of Chum Lee. What are our impressions of this human being?
I like how you broke it up into 2 words.
Yeah. Yeah, like she's the Mortal Kombat character. No, Chum Lee is the kind of person that you would find at a signing table at a hot rod exhibit. If people were getting together to do or a gun show or a place to illegally buy fireworks, that seems like the place where you would find him having a guest appearance.
I know this is not intentional, Rich, but it is so funny that you're bringing up a gun show with Chumley, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Oh, no. I don't like that at all.
But then,
what a terrifying cliffhanger.
But then we also meet, in this instance, the moving crew that they have for one of these larger items that actually gets pawned. And just to give the audience an idea, those folks are so non-memorable that I don't even have their names written down anywhere in my notes.
Yeah, I think they kind of kept them hidden or almost nameless just to keep the budget low. They're nope, 4 people and that's it. And I feel like Chum Lee was already a last minute addition of being the cut up around there.
So Max, kind of wandering around the shop that day. It's okay, well, we can't get him out of frame, so we might as well film him.
So, what do we think of the dynamic between all these characters in our pilot, all these people that we're going to meet? Chumley sort of seems like he is our bumbling idiot. But, what about Corey or Big Hoss and the Old Man as a whole? Do we think that they're substantive? Do we think that they're necessary? Could we just have Rick going and estimating the price of everything if we wanted to?
I like having this essentially be a 3-generation family business, and that angle of it. I don't think the show necessarily gets picked up without it, because you do want to have a bit of a connection to the family in the same way that what's the motorcycle customization show? That's also like a 2-generation like family business.
Oh, like American Choppers or something like that?
Yes, I think that's it.
So yeah, that I feel like people do like that kind of story. Duck Dynasty is the same way. It is not you kind of want Corey and the old man there as like a bit of a comic relief. It's so interesting to see how they parsed out this show on like B plots, like surrounding, because otherwise it's just Antiques Roadshow. That's the entirety of this show is Antiques Roadshow without getting to know the family a little bit.
Yeah. You can't just make like Antiques Roadshow with Monster Energy drink. Like that's not compelling enough. But this is like also at a time where you're seeing a lot of cable networks having to fill time slots, and it's kind of like right before the streaming boom, and they're just shows that could be on anytime, any order. And you saw TLC having a lot of success with like family oriented shows and like check out these interesting and unique families. And I think History Channel definitely tried to pivot into that lane as well. A&E too, where it's like, what are the stories behind these types of categoried people? And so it is a show about 3 generations of men in this industry and like their relationship. But yeah, to your point, Rich, it's interesting how they try to really shoehorn in these B plots to tell actual stories that I guess we'll get into a little bit later on if we think they're necessary or not.
Yeah, because it's definitely, I think, as we said, comparing this to Antiques Roadshow, the differentiation is on Antiques Roadshow, you don't really know a lot about the people who are estimating the prices of anything before they possibly go up to auction. They're sort of these nameless, like, geniuses in this sense. Instead, we get to know a little bit more about the background of each human being here. But, like, enough about them. I think the main reason most people watch Pawn Stars is they want to know
buy and sell.
How much does that cost? Do you want to
how
pawn
much
it?
that thing worth?
Pawn it or sell it. And in this episode in particular, we really get 4 items that we are going to be speaking about. We get a cannon from the 1890s. We get a replica suit of Roman armor, in case you're not thinking about the Roman Empire enough. We get a Knapp custom table saw. And then we also get a Carson City silver dollar, which I found was a really nice little input. And I would like to play a game with each of you and with the audience as well. We're going to give a small description of each of these items. And then I want you to guess how much the person who came in...
Think about it in your mind.
Yeah. Pause. Maybe if you're listening to this with your family, take your guesses and see who's the closest, because we're also going to guess as well.
This is a great drinking game.
This is a great bonding activity. It can be whatever you want
exactly.
it to be.
You can call one of your family members a dum-dum for underestimating how much something costs. So let's talk about the...
Call an X!
Yeah. Let's
How much
start
do you think
with...
this cannon's worth? I'm sorry we haven't talked in 3 years. Also, I'm sorry about all the things I did to you.
Oh my god. Do you still have that sweatshirt? You know, the one with the...
The one that I think is worth $60?
Yeah.
The best I can do is 20.
Oh my god.
I gotta call him my sweatshirt guy.
Let's start with one of the more throwaway items of this episode, and I think that's the Carson City silver dollar. I'm curious from each of you, how much do you think a Carson City silver dollar would go at this pawn shop?
Okay, so with historical context, what year was this filmed in?
This
The
was
show,
filmed in
2009.
2009.
Okay. Ever since the pandemic, the coin market has gone fucking cuckoo bananas. It is the fact that I even know about it is like alarming that so many people are valuing coins like this greatly. I would say right now we're talking 2023. I think it's going for like $1,200. Like if like understanding that it's extremely rare from a time and place where the mint was in Carson City. I think it was like they said it was like 9 years or something like that. That's a short lifespan for a mint. But yeah, I think I'm going like 1200, something like that.
And Rich, I think you bring up a really interesting differentiator of this show and what was on TV at this point in time, which is I think this show prided itself on making sure that history was digestible, in all honesty. Because go ahead.
I just thought of something from the context of when this was filmed. Do you think this became popular, or do you think this got greenlit because people were suffering during the financial crisis and actively had to start pawning their stuff for cash to pay bills and stuff like that? Like, do you think there was an increase in pawn shop sales from the financial crisis of 08?
I think they just thought Shumley was funny, but I mean, I'm different.
No, socioeconomic depth.
Rich, I'm actually going to bring that up a little bit later, so I'm glad you brought it up. But
great.
like, I do want to say, one of the things that I think the show can sort of pride itself on is being educational in a way that is digestible, rather than just being like, hey, dum-dum, listen to me spout facts at you in a non-interesting sense. So Rich gave his guess. Max, what are you thinking? How much are you paying for a Carson City silver dollar?
Well, the price is on it. It's $1.
I on the prep for this episode, I was actually thinking about if I just like said $1, Bob, for all of them.
Yeah, the price is on the coin. I'm not being scammed here. You can't tell me the value of metals when the price is on the dollar.
The price is on the coin, though.
And then for myself, I actually thought, Rich, I have a very limited knowledge of coins, but enough to be like, oh yeah, there was that time where everyone was collecting all of the quarters with the states on them.
Oh yeah, I had a map that you pressed into.
100%. So like, I would pay $100 for a coin as a whole. I would like to say, Rich, how much does it cost?
I just looked it up right now. I was off by 5 cents on eBay. I was off
Holy
by 5
shit.
cents. It was $1,199.95 on eBay.
That's amazing. I will say that from my perspective and from the audience, as well as this episode, they were charging $500, which we'll talk about the C plot of this show that existed a little bit later. But let's continue with our items. And Rich, you brought up, I think, something that was super interesting, and that is, hey, during this time we were dealing with the financial crisis. We had one person in this show who really exemplified that, and that was the gentleman who was selling the Nap table saw, which, if you were to tell me how much a table saw cost before this episode, I would have told you, that doesn't seem right. But this very much, like, this was an instance where the guy was like very much honest of like, hey, this is why people pawn stuff. They need money immediately.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to pawn something that you actually genuinely need in your life, but money is slightly more important.
In a city where everyone has, like, they're famous for gambling debts and stuff like that. So also, like, any gambling city, Vegas, New Orleans, I don't know, other ones, it would be a true, like, necessity in that market for them.
Yeah, and I think, what did y'all think about, like, because we're talking about this episode a little bit more disjointedly, but I think it's important that they show an example of what pawning is, why it's important for a pawn shop to do pawning, because in some instances it's more profitable for them to be able to pawn stuff as a whole. Like, Max, what are your thoughts about seeing this pawning instance?
Now, this Nap custom table saw was described as the Rolls Royce of table saws, which immediately has piqued my interest. As to, this fellow we get to know in the woodworking shop. Yeah, I mean, obviously it is the real people side of this show. Like, the rest of the people we see are people trying to come in to sell things, both collectibles, oddities, memorabilia, and make some cash off of it. But there is a flip side, and you do actually, you get Rick getting to, like, explain how he does his job. And I think something that Pawn Stars does well is that it's very good at making you understand these people are good at their job. You get explanations about the Carson City Mint. He breaks down how the business side and the transaction side works really clearly. So he gives you a lot of exposition into the world of pawn shopping without it seeming too forced. But at the same time, you're like, okay, Rick is good at his job, and so the other people can be goofy because there's a straight man guiding the way.
Yeah.
That being said, I would have said this table saw was $10,000.
Rich, what about you?
I think that's really smart, and I get why this show is on the History Channel. This is something for history buffs. It's just facts. It's relics. It's people trying to suss out scams and stuff like that. I would say, on the heels of what Max was saying, like as soon as he said that this was basically his entire business, this one custom table saw, like restoring antiques, a craftsman who is running a business wants to have like the absolute best possible tools to run that business. And if you need the absolute best, you're going to shell out for it. So I would say, yeah, probably about 10 to 15 for me.
Yeah, and I actually said 15, and our guy, it's super interesting from the perspective of, hey, we need to pawn this at a price where in case you don't come back for it, you just take the money and run, which you have every right to. That's why that is pawning as a whole.
Yep.
But he only gets $4,500 for it, which is...
It's a loan.
But the appraisal on the item itself was 20 grand.
20 grand.
Which
I wrote, holy shit, $20,000.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah. I mean, again, these are loans. And I accidentally watched the second episode first, and because of some mistake that Hulu had in their when I clicked on Pawn Stars, they apparently the turnover rate, or the people who don't show up for their pawn, like to pay off their loan and get their item back, is like pretty high. The percentage of
interesting.
That. Yeah, which means, and that's actually really good for their business because you are paying a fraction of the cost to own this thing outright. And you get 141 days. He said there's a 120-day period plus a 3-week grace period to get your stuff back. 141 days is legal property of the shop. And the second episode, they do a Rolex. Someone left a Rolex that's easily worth 10 grand, and they got $2,000 for it. And then they never came back. So what they could have done instead was just actually sell the Rolex for probably like $6 grand.
Yeah.
And instead got stuck. I don't want to get into speculation on what people are doing with their money and their property to need money that badly. But I did just watch a John Mulaney special about that exact thing. So who knows what this money could be for?
Oh my God. Well, let's move on to a little bit less serious and a sad situation and more of the comedy of this episode.
Oh boy.
Which is the idea of watching a man who brings in this custom made armor that he made to, quote, and I have this in my notes, get into character for working at Caesar's Palace, which is one of the most insane things, but also like, this is Vegas, I'm expecting it. How much are you bidding on this piece of armor?
Fake armor? I would pay $40 just for someone else to take it away. That would be. It looks extremely cumbersome to try to move around.
I don't know. I've seen the prices of Halloween costumes. I'd say $200 tops.
I said 500. My jaw genuinely dropped to the floor when the guy was like, yeah, I want $2,500 for this. Also, the comment from Corey of like, oh, this is accurate costuming. Why is the guy wearing sweatpants? Genuinely, I was giggling because I was like, yeah, like there are some jokes in this show that are absolutely like a delight and very simple and family friendly.
This scene, though, as a whole, though, is also our intro scene to Chumley. And for a while, they just kind of keep panning over to him and not introing who this guy is.
Yeah.
And then it's like, we get, boom, a 1-2 punch. He overbids the guy and offers him $2 grand for it. It gets yelled at by Corey. And then, of course, we have to put Chumley in the suit of armor. So it's like, this is the perfect item to introduce our like comic relief character into the fold.
Yeah,
and
here's our patented goofball. And it's so funny that they're like, immediately, you do not get to make bids on this because he said $2,000 and he's like, with whose money?
I genuinely love the idea of, oh, this is something I have to look forward to. Like Chumley, this idiot interacting with anybody else who's like more serious working at the shop.
Yeah.
Finding out the history of things, taking bids, all of that. And I thought it was a really good introduction to Corey as like the number 2 man at this pawn shop of like, hey, probably the hierarchy is we got Rick, we got Corey, this apprentice, and then we got the old man, Rick Sr., who is just like, he's there, he's very knowledgeable, but he's also taking more of a background role.
And we'll talk about Rick's main arc of this episode in a minute, but it is like Rick gets the really cool antiquity, and Corey, the number 2, the 3rd generation, he gets the bozo item. Like he gets the zonk.
You also get to see a little bit of like what the show is eventually going to become, in the sense that like, yeah, we're gonna have some really cool items coming in that are historical artifacts. At some point, someone literally brings in like a shekel of tire in one of the episodes. Like it's like the pieces of silver that they were paid to betray Jesus with. Like that's how old those coins
Rich
are. It's
is
a
talking
real one
about
of those.
Pawn Stars like it's prestige TV on HBO. Like, well, we're planting the seeds of what the narrative is going to become, sending these characters on their hero's journey.
Look,
this is Rich's bones.
I have taken now 3 classes on writing pilots, and let me tell you guys what an expert would say about this.
Oh my god.
No, we go in depth on these podcasts or on these episodes. I want to go in depth, but you get to see like, okay, legitimate items. However, they need some bonkers bozos from Vegas to come in here and try to sell them like, I don't know, like penguin feathers or something like that. It has to be like, it is like you have to have a very, very weird crossover between like exciting and also what the fuck did you just do?
Oh my god. Well, let's talk about our last item. And that is the first item that we're actually introduced to in the show. This is our A plot item. And that is a cannon from 1890. Which I think definitely as a pilot does a great job of setting the tone of, this is why I am here.
Yep.
I am here to watch something that I have no ownership, like understanding of, and see what it is worth, how they even figure out how much it's worth, and like what's that buying process look like.
So the old man who brought it in acquired this at an auction, and I want to know everything about the guy who goes to an auction and leaves with a cannon.
Did you also catch that he called himself a cannon collector? Like, as if that is a normal thing that people just do.
You have a backyard. Cool.
Oh my god.
Brag more.
So I'm genuinely curious, and the idea for this game of like bidding on things or like figuring out how much shit costs came from seeing this item. And me, like, I almost had that moment like when they show like Bill Gates like and ask him, how much does a box of cereal cost, Bill? And he's like, $300? I don't know. Like, so like I am curious from each of you, what did you think a cannon from 1890 costs?
I learned that I have no concept when it comes to the appraisal of cannons, and I need to learn more about cannon pricing.
Max at $3 million.
Because I thought this cannon would go for $80,000. And based on what I learned from this episode of Pawn Stars, owning a cannon is a lot more accessible than I thought when we began the episode.
Do I want a car or do I want a cannon?
Well, Rich, what about you?
I said a cool $2,000, and I also said $1,500 if it fires, because I do not want an active cannon on my property.
Oh, the cannon working actually takes the value down for you?
Absolutely.
That's super interesting.
Wow, that's interesting.
Who the fuck is going to fire a cannon? It's 2009 back then, but you can't just like come out firing a cannon. Like, I know you live in Vegas where you have like people who run those ranges where you can fire an AR-15 at a pile of potatoes or something like that.
It's my property. Gosh, dumb it.
This dude's just out here launching cannonballs into the desert.
And Rich, I actually wasn't that far off from you. But I went opposite. I said $1,000 in current condition, 2,000 if it fires. Because
here's a really important part too. When you get introduced to the cannon, they're like, I think it's a little bit more if the cannon fires. I'm like, they're gonna fire this cannon. I'm gonna watch them fire this cannon. It's like, you gotta show it, right? That's the best possible. It's Chekhov's cannon. You introduce it in the first act, and it has to be used in the third.
So I think, like, now that we're onto this cannon, I think that the cannon
it's a cannon
works
event.
as such a great.
Damn it!
Nope. This is where the podcast ends. I've had enough. So 62 episodes was great. So what I will say is I think that the canon, now that we have landed on it, is a great device to talk about some of the other...
A cannon is a great device.
Yeah. Some of the other ways that things that they do in this episode, right? First thing that I think we noticed from the beginning is how much of either Rick is really knows a little bit about a lot of shit, or the producers are just feeding him like, hey, here's 10 facts you need to know about cannons before you talk to anyone about cannons.
But that's okay too. I don't think anyone believes that Rick Harrison is an expert on...
I believe it.
Everything.
On cannons, 19th century US mints, as well as table saws. Like, it's impossible for all those things to be true, but he serves as like a really good vessel for presenting all this information. I think that's more important. Like, no one expects him to be a genius on it all. He does his research, he finds out the information, he gets comps and things like that, but he's able to present it confidently, like he knows what he's talking about. Yeah. And that's the key.
And he's also the audience surrogate. It's like he's going to talk you through like what your own questions would be about it. And in addition to like, okay, when pricing an antique like war machine, I don't know what the hell you would call it, like an antique piece of artillery, here's what you want to know. And also here's some questions that you think you're going to ask because like you feel stupid about this thing. And yeah, I think he does a great job of that.
Yeah, we don't talk about the attack on San Juan Hill a lot.
And we should. It was a canon event.
I think we have to talk about. We bring in an expert because Rick, I think, recognizes and speaks to the idea of, hey, I only know so much about this, but before I buy it, there's a shitload of vetting that we have to do.
And what's his name, Jeff?
And we bring in other Rick.
This is my wait a minute moment on the show. It's really poor pilot writing to have two characters named Rick in your first episode.
No, this is not your wait a minute moment.
That is a nightmare on Final Draft.
Is that the only thing that's wrong with Rick? Because it's not. Rick comes in, and I think this is probably all of our wait a minute moments. Is just Rick, the canon expert, is quite an individual. One, let's talk about Rick's getup really quickly because Rick is wearing a graphic tee and a hat that has to be from the Civil War. Like, I refuse to think that it's not from the Civil War. And also, I don't want to talk about which side we think Rick is rooting for.
He's an expert on ancient, like antique artillery from the U.S. military. You don't want him coming in dressed to the nines. You want him to look as goofy as possible because that's what sells the character. That's good costuming.
Rick looks like a man who does make his own artillery, and it's later revealed that he made the artillery they fire in this cannon.
Yeah, so that part was a little alarming to me. That was a little bit like Waco, Texas for me.
Yeah, and talking about other things that might be slightly alarming about Rick. First of all, he knows so much about this cannon. Just like looking at it, he's like, "Oh yeah, this is from 1892. This is why they were used." But then, and like literally, I have in my notes, I am learning so much about cannons that I didn't know I needed to know. And then he says, yeah, this was probably used by soldiers to shoot at the Native Americans or, the natives. And immediately the tone with which he said that, I gasped. I was just like, oh no, our expert turns out to be an expert in some other things as well.
Look, it's a different time. 2009, we didn't know better.
It's not even the worst way he phrased this situation. I will just before we get there, he does use the phrase good shootable bore a lot while just like really pumping a rod into that cannon, like, oh yeah, it's a good bore. And that's a little jarring. Cannon Rick seems a little bit aroused by the cannon.
So Max, do you mind telling us about what the other moment was?
I kind of baited myself into saying this line. Cannon Rick is getting ready to shoot the cannon and describes its usage as, if you have 1,000 screaming Indians running at you.
Yeah.
That was a moment.
That was a moment.
And don't get me wrong, it's a history thing. That is what people said back then, probably.
2009?
If not
in
worse.
2009, Rich?
No, when it was used. And it was really messed up. But also, they said it was for the Battle of San Juan Hill. So it's not for that. Right? Am I wrong?
I'm not the History Channel.
I don't know. It's kind of like the way people say that AR-15s are for hunting wild boars and feral hogs. It's not what they're for.
Yeah.
I now am worried about what Rick is using his cannons for, in all honesty, as well as his artillery. That's one of my big takeaways from this episode. Other than this person who exists, and that's terrifying. Let's talk about our D plot of this episode, which is
Jeff. Over the course of recording, this has gone from the B plot to the C plot. It's now been relegated to the D plot.
Yeah, well, the old man can't read it, so it's any letter we want. So I do want to say, because I did accidentally watch the second episode of this, and you can, because all of us are a little bit clenched up at what Ken and Rick had to say. Second episode of this show, someone brings in a Native American energy totem. It's a Native American person who lives in the area, brought in an energy totem that he bought from a medicine woman. I watched that with the whitest knuckles that you could possibly have, because I was like, where the fuck is this going to go? What's he going to say? They were extremely...
Cannon Rick walks in.
No, Cannon Rick, don't do it.
And he just looks at the guy and he's like, oh,
Cannon Rick, no.
you look a lot different than the plants I shoot at. Then
Jesus Christ. No, they were, I want to say, and we can all unclench our buttholes with this one. They were extremely respectful. Rick was like genuinely wanted to learn more about it. They brought in an expert who runs a specific native pawn shop in the area.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, to come appraise it and talk about like what it was used for, like why the medicine woman made it, that kind of thing. And I was very impressed that they did not go in a direction that I thought they were going to go in.
I am just so relieved to hear that they could bring in diverse experts and it's not just an army of Cannon Ricks.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that actually in the history. It's super duper interesting as a whole.
Should we get to the E plot?
Yeah, let's get to the F plot. So because none of us can read, just like the old man, it turns out that the reason that we talk about even this Carson City silver dollar, which I found super interesting, was because it was mispriced as a whole. And it turns out that a person who owns a stake in your store is wildly mispricing items, it sounds like, on a weekly basis. And then I loved how they did this. They had him drive a car. Corey and him obviously have a garbage relationship as a whole. And then we get to see him in a doctor's office not recognize letters as a whole. Like, genuinely just a delightful sequence that I thought was great.
The shoehorning in of this family plot, though, it is so producer manufactured. I don't believe for a second that the old man is misappraising and putting the wrong prices on coins. this is all a bit to create like the family dynamic and have wacky hijinks. That being said, I like it a lot. This is not a knock on the show, but oh my God, this is the most canned dialogue I think we've seen in any unscripted show we've covered on this pod.
Yeah, I do think like we do get a little flavor of like what the old man's character is going to be, because he does get a couple really good jabs in with his little like his kind of like testimonial thing, like leaning against a car outside. I believe it was me and Corey got into it a little bit at the eye doctor, and we're fine, but he's just an obnoxious little bastard. And then also, I think he uses the phrase, "I'll piss on your grave," when referring to how old he is. And
Old Man Harrison is a weathered 68.
Yeah.
That dude,
oh, yeah, no. This is the oldest looking 68 I have ever seen in my life. Yeah. I literally have in my notes, if he's 68, I am living sober for the entirety of my days, just so I don't look like that at 68 years old. Like, it's genuinely, I love some of the banter. I think this is that, like, the idea of the History Channel sort of being like, everyone has that grandpa that says things that you sort of turn around and are like, holy shit. Like, what if we had him on our TV show? And it was delightful, and it was necessary as a whole, because you need those off-color characters so that this just isn't a PBS show. Any other things on this pilot? Otherwise, I'd love to talk about things that we loved about this pilot.
I do want to mention too that that Old Man Harrison unfortunately passed away in 2018. I don't think the show continued like before he passed away, but yeah, he is. I was just looking him up just to see like what his like how many years of expertise he had.
Damn, canon accident.
God damn it, canon wreck. He struck again.
That's definitely in the canon of the show. Let's talk a little bit about things that we loved. Any things that you loved about this pilot? That
I like the pop-up trivia question. I like that we had a commercial break led by a trivia question, which was, what was the most valuable item at the shop? A 2001 New England Patriots Super Bowl ring. B, a Picasso ink sketch. Or C, a 15th century samurai sword. Then we come back from commercial. We learned by a long shot it's the Patriots Super Bowl ring, estimated at $60,000.
Which is insane.
Followed by the samurai sword at $8,000 and the Picasso sketch at $4,000. I did look it up. It belonged to defensive back Brock Williams, who I have not heard of.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You also get to see it in their intro segment a lot. They do like a title card thing where Rick's like pulling out a drawer of items, and you can see very prominently that the Patriots logo, the Patriots Super Bowl logo, is in there.
I can't believe that a Super Bowl ring is worth 1.5 cannons.
Which would you rather have? Answer in the poll below.
Okay, what would you rather have? A Super Bowl rig, 3 table saws, or 1.5 cannons?
Oh shit! Or
that's great.
Or was it 70 suits of armor?
Oh my god.
How many Carson City coins is that?
Oh god.
Rich, any things that you loved about this pilot that maybe we didn't discuss?
I mean, obviously the title card trivia questions is great. You do also get like the pop-up video like annotation at the bottom of it, which I thought was really nice. Like, you know, there's only so many facts that Rick can possibly spit out before you start to glaze over. And I think they just do like a really good job of condensing a lot of historical information into very, very small bites throughout the show. Like, especially if you're a history buff, like that little bit right there is like enough to keep you glued and keep your eyes on the screen.
So, Max, to go back on that trivia, some background on that ring. Williams pawned his ring for only $2,500 originally to the shop and was offered $15,000 to sell it.
Oh,
it is
dude.
now valued at $100,000.
Oh, Brock.
Let's talk about, as far as things that I loved, I genuinely think that having this family dynamic that we spoke to is so important to this show. It's so important to people tuning in, being excited to see, oh, the old man is going to do one of these negotiations. Let's see how he does as a whole. And also, like, I know we sort of talked about the expert, and in this case, Canon Rick, but like, the show having these experts to bring some variety, I think is so important. Wait a minute moments. Anything other than canon, Rick, that was a wait a minute to you?
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
something. The custom table saw guy telling the people who operate the forklift to be careful, because if you have any part of your body underneath it, there might be some dismemberment. That was the line that he used.
Yeah, that
You
was
could be
concerning.
halved.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty dangerous thing to have to try to navigate around. What about you, Max?
You know when you go to the doctor and the doctor's just wearing a t-shirt? I don't think that eye doctor was a real optometrist.
What are you talking about? It said in the pop-up, Dr. Schneider, eye doctor.
Yeah, well, if you look at the credits, Joe Schneider is a PA. He was helping with craft services.
No fucking way.
You know I'm fucking with you.
That'd be so fucking great.
Dub-dubs.
And yeah, for myself, I already spoke my piece. I think that's enough. We do have an in-flight question. There's Pawn Stars, and then there's a great show that we've been talking about a lot called Antique Roadshow. And our question is, which show would you rather be on? Pawn Stars or Antique Roadshow?
Antique Roadshow is just so boring. And I know it's just like, because you imagine like a Chum-Lee on an Antique Roadshow where someone's trying to sell like a landscape portrait of ducks who they don't know it's by. And,
Oh, God, it's just a Star Wars
I love
nerd.
ducks. Yeah. I love ducks.
So, Rich,
I'm going
Pawn
Pawn
Stars?
Stars. I gotta have some energy. I gotta have some. I'm not selling. Or they also don't buy anything on Antique Roadshow. It's just like, here's how much it's probably worth. Have fun.
All right, Max, what about you?
I mean, you might as well ask me, where would you rather be for a couple days, Max? Las Vegas, Nevada, or like Omaha, Nebraska? Yeah, I'm taking Pawn Stars every time.
Yeah, and I will say for myself, I think that something that's underrated about Pawn Stars is when you have an item that's worth nothing, they start getting really savage and like putting themselves on a pedestal of like,
you get teed up.
How dumb are you to bring this? People would love to be on this show, and you brought this garbage for me to appraise. So, like,
pranked.
At least, like, the people on Pawn Stars are sort of like, yeah, this is worth nothing. Like, we're not going to drag you. Like, we're sorry you think this is worth more than it is, and we're not going to buy it from you today. Like, yeah, Antiques Roadshow, low-key, they're rude. So we all would like to be on Pawn Stars.
It's high society rude. Somehow it's worse.
Yeah, it's like a parent being disappointed in you. It's much
I'm
worse.
not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah. This is the I'm disappointed of TV.
The harshest that you've ever heard.
Oh my God, the ASMR crowd's going wild. Thanks for that in-flight question. We'll talk a little bit more about how to submit those later in the episode. Let's talk about the history of this show. 21 seasons and counting. There are 675 episodes total. It is still
That's a lot of crap.
Still currently on the History Channel. The show actually went from being 21 to 24 minutes long. It is now an hour-long show per episode, which is insane.
Wow.
I mean, as we said, spoiler alert for those who are starting in with season 1, Old Man Harrison has passed. He passed in 2018. His last appearance on the show was in 2017, where he officially retired from the show. We also have to mention... How much was his
pension worth? How much do you think he would give him for his pension? I'm thinking like $45,000.
So, fun fact, he actually owned 5% of the store up until his retirement.
Right.
So, we do have to mention Chum-Lee, who was charged with a lot of different crimes, including some felonies, and avoided prison time after his house was raided. So if you would like to learn more about that, use your smart internet box. or your phone.
No, name his crimes. Name Chumley's crimes.
Nope, I'm not. I don't want to. So as far as
you made me talk about Ken and Rick's quotes. You have to name Chumley's crimes.
Okay, if you're gonna make me talk about Chumley's crimes, I will talk about Chumley's crimes really, really quickly. So as far as Chumley's crimes, let's go back here because I did have it pulled up earlier.
Max, it rhymes with Bristol Beth.
There was illegal substances that were found, as well as there were some assault allegations, and then there was also a firearm allegation that we will not talk about. So yeah, some fun things as a whole. And if you would like to see Chumley, he owns a candy store now, no joke, in Las Vegas. He also owns a memorabilia and merchandise store. Let's talk about some other lighted-hearted things. The show has had a total of 33 different expert appearances on the show. Some actually are like fairly notable. Jesse Amoroso, who owns Cowtown Guitars, which is a really sick guitar place in all honesty. Murray Sawchuck came in, who's a professional magician, really well known for like filming different magic specials. Like if you were big into magic in the 90s, you know who that is.
Oh, he pulled the Carson City dollar out from behind Chumley's ear.
He basically did everything. Like, yeah, there's definitely some really interesting appearances. And like, yeah, there were also a lot of very, very diverse experts that were on the show. So good on them. They could have just, mailed it in. There were also some really notable celebrity appearances on this show. Just a few that stood out to me. Bob Dylan, Steve Carell, and Marc-Andre Fleury all appeared on Pawn Stars at different times.
The other one, the competitor show, which I believe is called Hardcore Pawn, I think it takes place in Detroit. They had like a really tight relationship with oh god, it was the Red Wings old enforcer. I'm trying to remember his name.
That's pretty
fun. I think it might have been Darren McCarty or something like that. It was someone, but he was like a guest on that show and became part of the cast for like several seasons because they were like, yeah, we can't get rid of this guy. He's like his CTE brain and funny jokes like would entertain the audiences.
His alleged CTE brain. Let's make sure.
Alleged.
As far as the show goes, like Rich, I think you spoke a little bit to it as a fan of this, but like this show was one of a very highly rated show for History Channel. In 2011, it was actually the second highest rated reality TV show, behind any guesses of which show it was
Keeping
behind.
Up with the Kardashians?
Max?
I know the answer. I'm not going to say it.
It's Jersey Shore.
Nice.
So, fun fact, what state is Pawn Stars the most popular in across the United States?
Ooh.
Florida.
I'm gonna go Florida.
Close enough. It is Kentucky. In the most surprising thing that I have ever done on this podcast, let's talk about awards or award. Rick Harrison actually won Pawnbroker of the Year because of the recognition he brought to the industry for this show in 2010.
Wow.
Yes.
He wore another man's tux to the ceremony.
He brought his own cannon, though.
There were some other legal things that happened with the show. You can look them up if you want to. There were a ton of spin-offs for this show. 7, including multiple countries and cast members of the show going off and doing shows with the History Channel about different things. Other surprising thing about the show, there was a video game for this show that you could play on Facebook. Remember when Facebook had video games? Remember?
Oh God!
Remember when you
so
could
it'd be
play
like
video
your,
games on Facebook?
It'd be like your mom sending you invites to Farmville or whatever it was called.
You could do Neopets and then Pawn Stars. Those are the two things.
Wow.
There also was a credit card made
don't
by
get that.
MasterCard.
Don't get that.
Nope, that's why
That
Chumley's in jail.
That had special.
The APR is insane.
And then finally, Pawn Stars did have its own specifically licensed slot machine at Bally's in Vegas.
That sounds right.
That's the only one you've said that makes sense.
So that's enough about the history of this show. Rich, what is your game of the week?
I got 3 Chumleys and an old man. I didn't win. All right. Speaking of legal stuff, let's get into an oops, all illegal items spectacular from Pawn Stars. I have gone through the trouble of watching one total YouTube video to find out find 5 illegal items that were that were almost sold on Pawn Stars. My guess is that there were more, but they couldn't air it. All right. First one is Rick has to call his firearms specialist to appraise and gauge whether it's legal to buy this gun built into what? A refrigerator, B, a baby's crib, C, a skateboard, D, a desk.
I think I know this one.
That's shocking.
I think it's a desk. I think it's a desk.
Desk feels very like James Bond villain coded. I want to see skateboard gun.
We all want to see skateboard gun, but it was a desk. It was illegal to buy after all because the gun's patent number was rubbed off. That's the only reason. If they apparently you can buy a gun and you don't have to register it with ATF if it's an antique and made before 1894. I don't know what's special about that date, but there you go. All right.
ATF was founded in 1895.
All right. Not your average animal print instrument. Rick had to turn down a guitar made from what illegal animal part? A, a tortoise shell, B, rhino horn, C, snow leopard hide, D, elephant tusk.
Max, I'll let you go for it first.
I feel like you can't actually hunt ivory, so I'm going to say elephant tusk.
I am going to say tortoiseshell.
Geoff, you were 2 for 2. It's a tortoise shell. Apparently, prior to 1970, a lot of instruments in like bluegrass were used or were made with tortoise shells. All right. In a terrifying...
The turtle is sacred to the Kentuckian.
we must hollow it out. All right. This is going to be the last one, but in a terrifying episode of How the Fuck Did You Get This? Rick gets brought a piece of A, a Soviet tank cannon, B, a Sidewinder missile sensor, C, the Hubble Space Telescope solar panel, D, a German U-boat steering wheel.
I am going to say Sidewinder missile radar, whatever it was you said.
I am going to say the Hubble telescope because that's government property.
Both are technically government property, but it was the Sidewinder missile sensor.
Hey, good for you.
It was the heat-seeking part of a Sidewinder missile, which I have
That's
no idea how
nuts.
that person got that, and I don't want to ask follow-up questions. But thank you guys for playing Illegal Firearms Spectacular.
Rich, thank you so much for that game of the week. As our flight is coming to a land, we were able to buy back the plane. Let's end this podcast with 2 questions, and that is, 1, based off of the pilot, do you think you could see yourself continuing to watch Pawn Stars? And then 2, it sounds like it's still going, right? Or do you think this still belongs on History Channel, or maybe, hey, 675 episodes is enough? Rich, as our fan of the show, I'm curious for your opinion.
Yeah, I'm watching a little bit more. I started watching this a lot in a period of my time where I was moving to a new city and didn't have a lot going on. Sitting around and watching this also does make you depressed at a certain point in time. And as for whether or not I would like this should still be on, I mean, as long as people still have weird ass shit, I guess you gotta keep showing it on TV. If we're not out of weird shit, you have to keep bringing it in.
Max, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the same place here. It's a really entertaining blend of like infotainment. Like you get knowledge, but you also have wacky characters, and I think that's enough that this is a good middle of the afternoon. This is like a sick day categorized show for sure. And yeah, as long as people have weird shit they own, and History Channel needs to still film 24 hours of TV programming a day, this has a home. So keep it up.
Yeah, and for myself, I categorize this as show that you can watch with everyone in the family, right? This isn't one that I'm going to go out of my way to watch by myself, but if I'm sitting around with my family and it is on, I don't think anyone is going to get offended by the show unless Canon Rick is on the episode. With that being said, does the show still belong on TV? Yeah, sure. Until one asshole comes in with an NFT and is like, I'd like to pawn this, please. Then you immediately cancel the show. Immediately, the show is done forever. I'm sorry. That's the rules.
I don't know. It sounds like Chumley might try and sell you something, though.
With that all being said and our flight coming to a land, I'd love to hear where we can find you two gentlemen. Rich, where can we find you?
You can find me working hard at my gun desk. You can also find me on Instagram at Damn That's Rich. You can find original sketch comedy of Max and mine at Dadwagon Comedy on TikTok.
Max, what about you?
You can find me parked in front of the Pawn Star slot machine at Bally's Hotel and Casino on the Strip. And you can find me on all things social media at Maxwell Singh.
And you can find me still apologizing for Canon Rick. But if you're looking for me on social media, you can find me at RunJeffRun. If you can find the TV Pilot's License anywhere you listen to podcasts, as well as YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at TV Pilot's License. If you have a question about the show or for our next episode, you can shoot us an email at tvpilotslicense@gmail.com or give us a call at 213-290-1713. Make sure to watch out for our Instagram for a sneak preview of some of our upcoming episodes. But with the plane landed and the seatbelt sign off, we look forward to flying the bright skies of the TV world with you soon. And until then, pawn it or sell it.
Morty, I turned myself into a cannon. I'm Cannon Rick.